I'm going to talk about sports, the history of sports in this country since I was a child, men's participation and women's participation in sports. Something called Title X or Title IX, Title 10, I don't remember what it is. Some sort of a law that was, I guess it was passed in the 70s or early 80s, that said that equal amount of money had to be spent on recreational programs between men and women. The problem with this is that women had no interest in participating in sports. When I was a kid, I was born in 1971, the girls only played field hockey, and they only did it in gym class, and they had no interest in any sports ever, and they didn't play any sports in gym class. They did things like aerobics or acrobatics and things like that, things that women traditionally do. They never played soccer or baseball or football or softball. There were softball leagues that women did as adults, but they really didn't play it as kids. Me and my friends played sports every day. We played hockey in the street. We played football. We played baseball. We didn't play soccer with my friends. I was in a soccer league with my friends, so in that sense, I guess I did. We played a lot of basketball. And there were girls in the neighborhood. And one of the girls who was a close friend of mine, she had mentioned that she liked softball. I said, okay, we're playing baseball. Okay, so now I remember my friend Steve. He was a crybaby. He didn't want her to play. We were just kids, and he was crying because I invited her over to play. So he said no. And you know what? It was his house. It was his rules. He was such a crybaby over everything. It wasn't just that. So I remember I would go to other neighborhoods to play with other kids, sports, usually football. And I remember seeing girls that I knew. And I remember saying to them, would you like to play sports with us? We're going to play baseball or football, or they would even do ice hockey. They would spray water in their backyards until they built an ice rink. And they would have a giant ice rink, and they would ice skate and play ice hockey. And one of my friends was the number one ice hockey player in the district. He was really good. I was number 2, by the way. Not at ice hockey, but floor hockey. I was number 2. He was number 1. In my school, in the district, I don't remember how I did. But he was really good. So girls didn't play sports. And there was pressure to convince adults to convince young girls to play sports. And it wasn't pressure because it's good for you or it's good exercise or because it's fun or you don't know what you're missing. It was you should do it because the boys are doing it and because money has been passed into law that will be given to you if you play the sport. And it was always tied to Title IX or Title 10 or whatever they call it, and the money that they weren't getting because they weren't playing sports. They had to play sports to get money. And so the parents started insisting that their girls play sports, but it's always one parent saying all the girls have to play the sports, and all the girls didn't want to. I literally will say that I would ride my bike down the street and see girls that I knew sitting on the front of their porches playing with dolls. That is what I saw when I was a child. And there was, like I said, no desire for them to play sports. They didn't do it on their own. They had brothers that played sports. They did not participate. My sister may have sometimes with us, but she was not a sports player. She did when she got to high school. She ran track and field, and she did rowing. But she never played basketball with us. She would have been able to. Maybe she did when she was alone or so. I really don't remember her playing basketball. I believe that this is a manufactured thing to get women, to get girls into sports, and the basis was not because it's good for them. It was because of the money. They wanted access to the money. I was in the marching band. The football team gets all the money. The marching band does not get all the money. And we don't sit there and cry and say, how come we don't get all the money that the football team gets? We didn't do that. We did a trip from New York to Florida. We were invited to a Florida state competition, and we actually won. We defeated all the Florida teams. And actually, we were really good. We beat it. We beat everybody. The marching band was the best band, and we beat lots of schools. And we went to Michigan, and we beat lots of schools. I mean, we were dominating. Unfortunately, it's not like that anymore. And the thing that was interesting about it is that our competitor won like 15 years in a row. And then my freshman year, they had hired a new teacher who had a reputation for turning bands around, turning schools around, and they had the invitation to go to Florida, so everybody wanted to go, and we won. We had a great band. And the other schools were intimidated by how well we did, and some of our teachers ended up going to work for the other schools because in the end they did have an overall better music program. They didn't let the freshmen in. That's why. Our school let everybody in. I remember, I want to be in. Don't worry, Dave, trust me, you're going to be in. They accept everybody. So it's different today. Now girls, I guess they want to play sports. I don't, you know what, my niece, I have one niece, does not want to play soccer. She's enrolled in soccer. She doesn't want to do it. That's what my sister told me. I don't know. There's boys that don't want to play. There's boys that get enrolled and then they don't want to play. Louis C.K. tells a joke about how his daughter doesn't want to play soccer, and he says, okay, soccer's out of our lives forever, right? So it goes both ways. There's people that don't want to play sports. Their parents may get them into it, but women getting involved in soccer, the reasons were wrong, and you shouldn't be telling your kids what to be interested in, forcing them to do things they don't want to do. Obviously, it's different now. But what's going to happen next is someday somebody... Okay, I'm going to tell you what happened next. There was an issue with cheerleading, and the issue was something about, okay, the football team has cheerleaders, and the football team has local games and away games, and the cheerleaders go to the local games, and maybe they go to the away games, I don't know, and there's funding for that. And then you got cheerleaders for the basketball team. But the cheerleaders for the basketball team only did the home games, and they did not do the away games. And somebody sued to make it so that the cheerleaders did the away games, because they said it was sexist or something like that, that the boys got, it was a boys basketball team, that the boys got to play basketball at an away game, but the cheerleaders did not get to participate in the event. Well, the problem was the cheerleaders did not want to do the away games. And that's why there was a lawsuit, because they were refusing to do it. The cheerleaders, for whatever reason, did not want to participate in an away game. Well, and maybe it's because there were no fans. You go to an away game, there's going to be no fans for your team. Who are you cheerleading to? They're cheerleading to nobody. So there was a lawsuit to force them to go to the away games, and the lawsuit won. And the school had to provide funding for the girls to go to the away games, and they had to go even though they didn't want to go. And there was something else about like a girls basketball team that maybe didn't have cheerleaders, and the cheerleaders didn't want to cheerlead for the girls basketball team, and somebody sued and forced the cheerleaders to cheer for the girls basketball team even though they didn't want to do it. And this is stupid. It's just stupid nonsense. And they always say, well, it's sexist. If the boys have it, then the girls have to have it. I mean, come on. It doesn't have to be that way. Everything shouldn't be equal, tit for tat. That is what it means. That is tit for tat. Well, if your basketball team has it, then the other basketball team has to have it, even if nobody wants to do it. It's tit for tat. It's not equality. People don't want it. Oh, I had it. Okay, so another thing that you may know is that the history of cheerleading is that cheerleaders used to be men. Cheerleaders were all men. The cheer teams were men, and I can't remember. There was something different about cheerleading when the men did it. But when the electronic announcement systems and the announcements came along, they got rid of the male cheerleaders, and eventually women started to do cheerleading. Okay, so this video is about how I believe that girls were forced into playing sports that they didn't want to play because some parents wanted to do it. And you need to get a certain number of people to actually form a league. So you have to have participation with large numbers of people, and the parents have to do it because the league is nonprofit. And they have to do it, one sport at a time so that sports don't compete against each other and sports grow. And we do have the best female soccer players in the world in the United States. And I think it's great that women play sports nowadays, but don't kid yourself. It wasn't always that way, and it wasn't because of oppression. It wasn't because the men refused to permit the women to play sports. That's absolute nonsense. When I was in the marching band and we went to Florida, the school didn't give us any money. It was like $200,000. We had to pay for our own ticket, and we had to do fundraising to raise the $200,000 that the staff needed to pay to fund the rest of the trip. So there's a lot of myths about the history of women in sports. It's not based on oppression. It's just nonsense. And that's my personal opinion.